Hello! In this video, I'll be talking about Invoice Template Designer. Invoice templates are created using flexible reporting engine. This engine allows not only to create invoice templates, but also custom reports and other printing templates, for example for quotes, purchase orders, credit notes, etc. Since the most common tasks solved by reporting engine is invoice template creation, I'll focus explicitly on this part. But all principles and practices described in this video can be applied to solve other tasks mentioned above. All templates are stored in the reports table accessible from the reports section of the navigation tree. Here we have some built-in filters which help you to quickly display only those report types you need right now. With time, this list may become pretty large, so please don't forget to use this filtering option. There are two ways to create invoice templates. One, use one of built-in templates at the base. We have 7 such templates here. Or create template from scratch. To clone built-in report, select it and click Copy predefined report from the context menu, or click the same button on the ribbon. A new row will be created in the list of reports. Report name is the same as the base one, and before starting to edit it, open its properties and change its name to differentiate it in the list. Then click Edit in the Designer button to open created report in the Invoice Designer. In this video, I'll be showing template creation process from scratch. It will give better understanding of the process and we won't miss a single step of the template creation process. So I delete a report which we just created and click New button on the ribbon. In the display name, I type new report name, and in the data type field, I select entity type to assign this template to. I have to select invoice here. If to click next, the wizard will offer you help with designing a report, but I click finish to simply create an empty report. New template will immediately be opened in the designer. But let me close it and open properties of the created report. And point your attention on is in place report property. When this checkbox is selected, this template will be added to the drop-down menu shown under the print button, which can be found in the invoice list or in the invoice editing form. Look here, I select any invoice, and under print button there is a drop-down menu with a list of our invoice templates. So I select this checkbox, and from now our template will appear in the drop-down menu under the print button. Otherwise, this report will be considered as a custom report. Custom reports can be generated only from the report list. You open report list and double-click on any custom report to generate it. In contrast, in-place report can be generated using print button in the corresponding list. So, we have created a new report, or we can call it a template, and let's open it in the report designer again. The designer window has a few areas: toolbar, which contains elements that we can place on the designer surface, the designer surface, where we will actually build our template, properties panel, which allows to change a lot of properties of different elements selected on the designer surface. Property set depends on the selected element. I'll try to show the most important ones during this tutorial, but it is impossible to describe all of them. However, almost all properties are self-describing, and clicking on any property allows to see a small hint at the bottom of the Properties panel. Next is a Group and Sort panel, which allows to apply grouping and sorting to a report's data, and a Field List panel, which serves as a bridge between reporting engine and BaccS database. It shows our database structure. Let me talk a bit about how data comes to a template. Each report may have one or many data sources. Each data source represents one table from BaccS database. So, reporting engine may be used not only to print invoices or quotes, but to display and analyze any data contained in the BaccS database in different forms, for example, in simple tables or charts or in pivot grids. Our report already contains one data source. It is called Collection Data Source 1. If to select it, in the Properties window, you will see that it is linked with Invoice object type. However, default name is not descriptive. Let's change it to Invoice. Sometimes the name in the field list does not change immediately, so I simply close and open this report again. Now we get correct name here in the field list. When you need to add another data source to a report, drag Collection Data Source control to a Report Designer surface. New data source is created, then select it, select object type and name in the Properties panel, and you are ready to use this source in your report. I'm deleting it because we already have only one data source that we need to build our invoice template. Remember in place report checkbox that we checked during template creation? This means that when we select one or multiple invoices in the invoice list and click print button, then our data source table will contain only those selected invoices. If in place a report checkbox was not checked, then our data source will contain all invoices saved in the database. It is important to understand this concept before starting to build a template. Report template has a banded structure. Final report is composed by placing bands in the required order, required number of times. Any report may have report header, detail band, and report footer. Headers and footers may have sub-bands, and each detail band in its turn may have nested reports, which also may contain headers, footers, detail band, and sub-bands. By default, our empty template has only one detail band. From all sides of our single band, you can see page margins. Previously, it was a common practice to leave about 2 cm on left to allow filing, but nowadays almost nobody prints invoices, so I recommend to decrease these margins to get more space for actual data. To do this, simply drag margin borders. This margin is detail bands margin, so please use bottom border to decrease size of the bottom margin. To add a new band to a report, right click somewhere and select Insert Band Item, then select band type, report header for example. Header band is printed only one time, no matter how many invoices will be printed. Detail band will be printed as many times as the number of printed invoices. So, if report header will be useful in other types of reports, here it has no sense. So, I delete it. And all general information about invoice must be placed in the detail band here. I'm starting to build a template. To show something on the designer surface, you use a set of controls from the toolbox. You can read about all these controls in the manual. To display any text in the template, you can use label control here, table, or rich text. In most cases, you will use labels. Let's drop it on the surface. Labels can display static text or can be linked with any data field from our data source. To edit a text, double-click on a label and enter desired text. By default, all labels have some font parameters applied. These parameters are defined in the font property of the report. So I click on empty space somewhere here to select report and see its properties. Here I can find font property, and we can see that Times New Roman with almost 10 size is selected. I can open settings dialog and select another default font for our template. Let's select, for example, Calibri and size 12. You see that labels font was changed to the default one. Of course, you can override default style for individual labels by simply changing its properties. So, for example, I increase font size, and from now this changed property won't be inherited from the default settings. Let's make it bold. Rulers at the top and left will help you to precisely position controls. You can change units by changing reports measure units property. I usually use 1/10 of a millimeter. So I put our invoice label somewhere here and center the text. Our template will be very simple. Let's just add limited set of data into our header. It will be number, date, term, sender, and customer. So I create captions for these fields, drag and drop few labels, and type number, date, term, sender, customer. Then positions it somewhere here. Sender will be here, customer will be somewhere here. These are only data captions, and we have to put actual data near these labels. To do this, I go to the field list and expand our invoice data source. Here I have to find necessary fields and then drag them to the designer surface. So let's do it with number, date, term. Select all these 3 labels and increase their size. As you see, there is a descriptive icon near each field which shows its data type. There are 2 number fields here, but they have different icons. This one contains numeric value, while this is our formatted number. That is why I dragged this field to our designer surface. Customer field is a reference field. There is a small arrow near it which expands this data type to provide access to nested fields. So we can include any customer's data in our template. Now let's drag and drop name, address, and VAT fields. Name, address, VAT, and increase size. To find information about us, I collapse customer node and find user node. I expand it and find full name property, and full address, and also let's increase the size of our fields. I can select two labels holding Control key and change background colors of these labels. Foreground color, background color. Let's select white smoke and apply bold formatting to number field. Okay, our header is ready, and before moving further, I'd like to stop and tell about few important properties. To see how template works, we can switch to the Preview tab, and we see all our invoices here. In the design mode, it is not possible to select which invoice to preview, and if our database contains a lot of invoices, preview generation may take a lot of time. We can limit number of records shown in the design mode. I'm going back to the designer, select the whole invoice, and scroll Properties panel to Report Print option. Here it is. Detail count at design time property allows to limit a number of records in the preview window. Let's set it to 5. Preview again. And now we have 5 invoice headers, which are printed one after another. But each invoice must start from a new page, of course. Switch back to the designer, select Detail band. When any element is selected, a small arrow icon appears in its corner. It allows to open Helper menu, which provides access to the most used properties of the selected element. I click it and find Page Break property here. It allows to specify how to add page breaks for this band. I'm selecting before the band except the first entry. Done. Now it looks better. Each invoice starts from a new page. Next property I want to talk about is a format string. You see that date here is printed incorrectly, as it includes 0 time. We never need time to be shown in our invoices. Amounts and prices usually must contain only 2 decimal places, and before these amounts sometimes we'd like to print currency symbol or currency name, and before VAT number here we'd like to see the word VAT. All these tasks are solved using format string property, which also can be accessed using a helper menu. Here it is. I'm selecting date field, open helper menu, and open format string dialog. It contains a lot of options. You can examine them by yourself to see which options this dialog provides. Select any format options to see example result at the bottom. Now we need datetime category, custom tab, and D option. Okay, format string is changed and now it looks as following: curly brackets, 0, colon, and the format string itself, which is D. Everything which is put outside curly brackets means prefix and postfix. Knowing this, let me type format string for the VAT field. I select it, open helper menu, and type in the format string property VAT, colon, space, and then 0 in curly brackets. No format string after 0, as you see. This means that field value will be printed as is, without applying any formatting. This is how prefixes are added. Now, if customer has a VAT number specified, it will be printed with VAT word before it. You see, if VAT field is empty, nothing will be printed here at all. Also, you may notice that address field here doesn't grow and doesn't include as many rows as needed. This behavior is controlled using canGrow property. I open helper menu for the customer address and find canGrow and multi-line properties here. I select both of them and switch back to the print preview, and you can see that address field grown and shifted VAT field downside. Okay, enough with properties for now. We'll study more of them a bit later. Now let us add a logo. Let's go back to the user reference property and find logo field in it. Drag it onto the designer surface. Let's move our fields a little downside and put logo into the top left corner of our invoice template, resize it, and open a helper menu. It has an image sizing property. Current value is normal, but to currently zoom our logo we have to select squeeze option. Also, it is important to select image alignment. Instead of default, let's select top left. Go back to the print preview again, and you can see that our logo was added. Finally, let's draw invoice table header. To do this, you can use labels or table element. Since we already worked with labels, I will use table. Drag and drop it onto the designer surface from the toolbox, and default table with 3 columns will be created. In default templates in BaccS, you can see that labels were used for this task because it's easier for me to realign them when needed. But here I will use table just for demonstration. Say our header will include PO number, job name, work type, quantity, price, unit, and amount. 7 columns in total. So I have to add necessary number of columns and name them. To add a new column, right-click on the table, select Insert, and click Column to Right. 4, 5, 6, 7. Then increase width of the table and type column names. To set a background, select all cells, holding a Control key, and change background color property. Again, I select white smoke. We can add borders. Instead of none, you can select all here in borders property, and then change color of borders. Black is to contrast, so I select some shade of gray here, for example silver. Also, we can increase padding in the table cell to shift all these labels to the right a bit. So I find padding property and add left padding 5, and let's do the same for the right padding. Also, if we like, I select again all cells and we can align them in center. And to remove this empty space below table header, I simply decrease size of this detail band. You don't need to do this precisely, just drag it a little higher and it will automatically move to the most bottom point of this band. So I go to the print preview, looks nice, and we are ready to start printing invoice rows. But let's finish for now and continue in the next video, because this one is already long enough. Thank you for watching and see you soon.